Following the resignation of Brad Banducci, the Woolies CEO, well, it appears companies are getting the memo. You go woke, you go broke. But first, let's return to the latest intervention in the energy debate from Andrew Twiggy Forrest, who's used his opportunity at the National Press Club yesterday to demonise nuclear power, which, as Newspoll told us yesterday, the majority of Australians now support.
If we swallow this new lie that we should stop the rollout of green energy and that nuclear energy will be our fairy godmother, we will be worse off again. This misinformed, unscientific, uneconomic, plucked out of the air, thin air bulldust of nuclear policies of politicians masquerading as leaders helps no one.
Now, when he was asked about this morning, about the very valid concerns many farmers have about the rollout of renewables, well, Twiggy said, nothing to see here.
Know you're a man of the land. Do you accept the argument that wind and solar farms are taking up prime agricultural land, therefore threatening food security?
Yeah, that's absolute rubbish, mate. I mean, if we build out several Saudi Aramcos, one keeps, Saudi Arabia, 38 million people, 10 million more than us in very fine style, thank you, one does. We could build several of those out. We could send Australia green.
Joining me now, Shadow Energy and Climate Minister Ted O'Brien. I'll get into the detail of what Twiggy had to say there on a couple of things in a moment, but I mean, Chris Bowen, Andrew Forrest, arguing that nuclear doesn't stack up. The problem is, Ted, we can't even have a proper debate because of this moratorium, because we're prohibited as a country for having nuclear on the table. And of course, we need that moratorium lifted to get a gauge of any likely interest commercially in nuclear. That's the big impediment. This is a false debate at the moment.
Peter, you're right. And the stronger the likes of Chris Bowen and Mr Forrest go, the more you have to ask the question, if you are so confident that nuclear won't stack up, well, lift the moratorium and let's find out. I don't know why you would maintain a ban on a technology. I mean, the likes of Chris Bowen is, in fact, right now, Labor is going down the very pathway that Mr Forrest is suggesting. And look what's happening. Australians are now paying among the highest prices for electricity in the world. Our electricity grid is wobbling and blackouts have already started, but they're only going to get worse. And by the way, we went to COP last year in Dubai saying Australia's emissions are going up. This is the pathway that Mr Forrest wants Labor to go down. It's a pathway we are going down right now and is leading Australia down the path to poverty and to a lot of hardship. There's a problem to be solved, and the coalition is going about it in a way saying we need every technology on the table to be considered, including zero emissions nuclear energy.
Well, I've known Twiggy Forrest for about 20 odd years, and I've watched every personal crusade he's had beyond his business interests, clean water and beaches, renewables, Indigenous jobs, anti-slavery, every one of them. And often it's follow the fame, follow the dollars. We're told he's putting $20 billion into renewables. I mean, I reckon if there was a big government subsidy for nuclear on the table, he might like nuclear.
Peter, maybe. And look, with no disrespect to Mr Forrest and others out there who have made a lot of wealth, good on them. I'm a capitalist at heart. But we shouldn't be in Canberra focusing on how to get billionaires more money. Rather, it should be how do we save battlers money. He's got a big voice and good on him for using it. But I'm interested in the voice of the average Australian family that right now is in the midst of a cost of living crisis and is being hit time and time again by this Labor government with more taxes. A government that has a plan for energy that is only sending prices higher and hurting the average Australian battling family. They're the ones we need to represent. And so, again, Mr Forrest certainly has a right to use his voice, but it's the voices of average Australian families who I believe we need to be listening to.
Talk to me about the Coalition's plan to explore nuclear, but also the way in which nuclear, as opposed to, say, renewables, which renewables require a way to get that power to market, to get it to the homes where people want the additional power. The ability for nuclear to use a lot of the existing transmission infrastructure we have.
But I think the starting point is to recognise that 32 other countries in the world have nuclear energy today, and another 50 are looking at introducing it for the very first time. And they are doing so because they face the same challenges as we do in Australia. They want to keep the prices down, they want to keep the lights on, and they need to decarbonise. Now, these new entrants, I was in Dubai, I mentioned end of last year, looking at what the UAE did. They were able to bring in 1.4 gigawatt reactors, one a year over a 4-year period. In our region, we've got the likes of the Philippines, Indonesia, Singapore, all looking at entering the civil nuclear industry for the very first time, because they know that nuclear offers that base load power into the grid. And as you have more and more renewables coming in, well, those renewables need to be helped out. Renewables cannot do the job alone. And this is why, from the Coalition's perspective, we're looking at the electricity grid saying, okay, there's lots of renewables here, but they're not being firmed up and prices are soaring. What baseload clean energy technology is out there that can do the job? Learn the lessons from overseas, in comes zero emissions nuclear energy. And to your point, one of the benefits of considering nuclear energy for retired coal plants in those areas, those communities, is you can leverage the existing infrastructure. One of the reports I've read is a report for the Department of Energy in the United States, which is suggesting over 30% reduction in capital costs if a nuclear plant can leverage that sort of infrastructure. And if I go one step further, Peter, if you'd allow me, we're talking about Andrew Forrest before. Mm-hmm. If you talk about another billionaire, Bill Gates, and apparently Mr. Forrest and Mr. Gates are good mates. I think they should get together and have a chat, because Mr. Gates is actually with the nuclear technology he is backing. It is replacing a coal-fired power station in the state of Wyoming in the United States. And there you had 4 different communities in a state that had never had nuclear saying, pick us, pick us. Why? Because they knew it gave the union jobs certainty. You're able to transfer workforces over. These are communities that have high energy IQ. Now, some people say Australia can't do that. My view is we need to back Australians. I'm optimistic Australia can do this better than any other country if we are prepared to have that balanced mix in the grid and embrace technologies that are being embraced the world over.
Ted, I tell you what, if the government says we can build nuclear submarines in Adelaide, we can certainly have nuclear power in Australia. We just need the politics to clear away, and let's have an honest, informed debate. Ted O'Brien, thank you